So I'm hearing this question a lot at the moment. How come when I'm meeting people for the first time, it feels like I'm the one putting in all the effort to get to know them, to get them to open up? I'm doing everything right. I'm asking them all these questions. I'm showing an interest in them. So how come no one is showing an interest in me? How come I'm asking all these questions and getting nothing in return? Do they not want to know more about me? Is it because they find me boring? Is it because I'm not fun to talk to? So I just wanted to make this video to clear up what might be going wrong in that situation, because this is really common. This is like a really common situation to find yourself in. And a lot of it is down to the assumption that people love to talk about themselves. We hear this advice online and in books a lot, that you should let the other person do 90% of the talking, because people love to talk about themselves. And if you can kind of indulge their ego, then they can just talk and talk and talk. And then they'll find you an interesting conversationalist because you're asking them the right questions to get them to open up more. Yeah, basically it comes down to this idea that everyone is their own favorite subject. So you should just let them talk freely. And that advice can work in certain situations. It can be very effective, don't get me wrong. And having an inherent interest in other people and being curious, it's never a bad thing. Like, that is a trait that if you keep on developing, it will take you far in terms of your social life. But when it comes to that small talk phase, when we've only just met the other person, we've barely exchanged a few sentences with each other, we don't just want to start launching into this big interview. People don't want to feel like they're being interviewed by someone they just met. So a lot of people hate small talk. They find it extremely uncomfortable. I've definitely been one of those people in the past, but that was before that I understood like the overall purpose of small talk, because it does serve a very important function that people don't really know about. So just taking everything back to like a basic human level, small talk is still a low stakes form of threat detection. We've all got these like tribal instincts hardwired into our brain where even now, even in the modern day, we're scanning our environments for potential threats. When we see someone that we don't know, we're still kind of weighing up in their brain whether they're like subconsciously like a danger to us, whether they're like a threat to our immediate survival. When we meet someone for the first time in that early conversation phase, we are subconsciously monitoring things like their body language, their demeanor, their tone of voice, whether they're making eye contact. And we're using those subconscious things to decide whether they're like friendly or not, whether they pose a potential threat to our safety. In the modern era, like, of course, we're not like all out hunting each other, are we? We're not in tribes killing each other. But this is still a process that we have to go through just to like start to feel comfortable around this person. So again, if you start launching into interview mode before this person has necessarily finished that process, then they might kind of be on their guard a little bit. They might be questioning your intentions. Why does this guy want to know everything about me straight away? Especially if you're the one asking all the questions before you've volunteered any information about yourself. So yeah, whilst this advice that people are their own favorite subject is true, it mainly applies for later down the line when they've decided that you're not a threat and they can start sharing more with you. So what that means is we need to carry the conversation at first. We need to put in most of the legwork, to do most of the talking until they reach that stage where they feel comfortable opening up more to you. So that's what you got to do if you want your effort to be reciprocated. So now we're going to get into some actionable advice for how we can start navigating that small talk phase and help them feel more comfortable opening up. So number one, and this is like the most basic thing you need to be doing. Like, this is probably the most important thing at all, but still a mistake that so many people make. Stop giving one word answers to other people's questions. Say if someone asks you, how are you doing, or how was your day? If you just reply, good, and that's the end of it, you've effectively killed off any chance of like an interesting conversation developing off the back of that. There's honestly no faster way to kill a conversation than just giving some like boring, blunt answer like that. You're not doing yourself any favors if you want to be perceived as more interesting and memorable. They're probably just going to think you're dry as fuck and kind of unfriendly. So secondly, we want to prepare some more interesting answers in advance for those common questions that tend to get asked in conversations. You know, conversation is a fluid thing. It is incredibly unpredictable. But when you're meeting someone for the first time, you can kind of predict what kind of questions are going to be asked. Like, there is some kind of script that these conversations tend to follow. You can probably guess that they're going to ask you something along the lines of, what do you do? Where are you from? How do you know this person? Like, or some kind of variation of those questions. But it's usually going to be those types of questions. And again, going back to the intro, most people, ourselves included, do struggle to open up right at the beginning of a conversation, especially when we're put on the spot, when people ask us questions about our life. People used to ask me, or people still do ask me, what do you do? Like, how do you earn your living? What's your job? Like, last year I worked in a jewelry store, and when people would ask me that question, I'd just give them the most regular answer possible. I work part-time in a shop. Even though there were some quite exciting parts to that job, I'd never really include those in my answer. What you've got to do is, you don't want to tell flat out lies, but we can kind of embellish the truth a little bit. We can highlight the more exciting parts of our life. So I took some time and I prepared a better answer. I'd say something like, oh yeah, I work in sales in watches and jewelry. I'd like hype up the products. Say, yeah, I work with like some wealthy clients, which it was all true. None of these were lies. I just didn't tell them the boring parts of the job, where I'd just be like sitting down on the iPad, distracting myself when no one came in the shop. So when people ask us those kind of questions that most people would give a really generic answer to, we want to find ways to add more character to our answers. Figure out ways we can share stories and feelings and opinions, things that just make them seem a little bit more exciting and unique. Again, another example is if someone asked me, how do you know this person? Like a mutual friend or acquaintance. I could say something boring like, I met them 2 years ago. Or I could give a more interesting story about how we used to hate each other, but then we started talking when we sat next to each other in maths, and gradually we bonded over our shared love of, I don't know, Korean movies or some shit like that. Just something which has a story behind it, some actual character. So after preparing some proper answers to questions like that, what we can also work on doing is sharing a greater variety of detail, of information in our answers. So there's this idea that I learned called leaving breadcrumbs. I learned this from this book called Models. So basically, you're leaving this breadcrumb trail, this information trail for the other person to follow in conversations. Each breadcrumb is like a different detail that you're inserting into your answer, a different potential conversation that you could have. So you're putting all these like different bits of information in your answer, and you're kind of leaving it up to the other person which one they want to inquire further about. So you give them like lots of different options, and then they pick which one they want to talk about. So again, let's create a hypothetical example of this. Let's say I'm in the taxi, I'm getting a ride home, and it's kind of awkward up front. Me and the driver aren't really saying anything to each other. He asked me a question, how has your day been? Again, instead of giving a really boring generic answer that kills off any possibility of having a conversation, I could say, yeah, it was okay. I had work today. I'm working on quite an exciting project at the moment. That's going really well. You know, I tried this new sandwich place at lunch. I had a fucking pastrami sandwich for lunch. It was really good. And then I also booked tickets at the weekend to go to this festival, and I'm going to go and see this new horror movie with my friends. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Maybe a shit example, but you see what we're trying to do. We're exchanging lots of different pieces of information. We're inviting them to pick one or two, and then they're going to ask you more questions, and you just get like a little bit of rapport going. Then you can start asking them questions. It's like, this is a way of finding a common topic of interest. You can kind of just keep doing this. You can keep like filtering and filtering until you find something that the both of you really like talking about. And then you can get to interview mode if you want. You can start asking them more questions, because now they're going to be comfortable sharing more with you. So I'm just going to give you a little bonus exercise you can do, which is going to really help with everything else you learned in this video. So this exercise is called Homework for Life, and I learned this in the book Storyworthy. And basically what this does is it helps you find the stories in your life, like stories which you can bring to the conversation. Kind of like what I was talking about before, where you're almost embellishing the truth to make your life seem more interesting. Because a lot of people think you need to have this really expensive, lavish lifestyle to have an interesting life. You need to constantly be going out and doing exciting things in order to have stories and things to talk about. And that's kind of been quite a central thing for me with my YouTube, because I live an extremely regular life. I'm not doing all these exciting things. I'm not living out in Thailand or Bali, but I've still got to think of stories and lessons to bring to this channel. So basically what Homework for Life is you create this spreadsheet on Excel or wherever, and every single day you write down the most story-worthy moment of your day. So not something which is the biggest or the most exciting, not the most dramatic, but just something that you found interesting about your day, or something that kind of, there was a lesson behind it. It was emotionally revealing. So I'm reading a couple from 2024 now, and there's one where my credit card got cancelled and I'm really stressing about money and I can't afford anything. And then the realization is just kind of stop stressing about what I can't control. Just to like a small insight from my day, getting rejected by a girl for the first time and realizing that it wasn't even that bad. But yeah, I like how this trains you to spot the stories in unlikely places. It can honestly turn an extremely regular everyday moment into like a really cool lesson or a really cool potential story for you to bring out in conversations. So yeah, that's definitely something I would recommend. I hope you've enjoyed this video, my friends. Let me know what you thought down in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.